We must equip ourselves to deal with different kinds of worries by learning the 3 basic steps of problem analysis. The 3 steps are: get the facts, analyze the facts, arrive at a decision, and then act on that decision. Obvious stuff? Yes, Aristotle taught it and used it. And you and I must use it too if we are going to solve the problems that are harassing us and turning our days and nights into veritable hells. Let's take the first rule. Get the facts. Why is it so important to get the facts? Because unless we have the facts, we can't possibly even attempt to solve our problem intelligently. Without the facts, all we can do is stew around in confusion. My idea? No. That was the idea of the late Herbert E. Hawks, Dean of Columbia College, Columbia University, for 22 years. He had helped 200,000 students solve their worry problems, and he told me that confusion is the chief cause of worry. He put it this way. He said, half the worry in the world is caused by people trying to make decisions before they have sufficient knowledge on which to base a decision. For example, he said, if I have a problem which has to be faced at 3 o'clock next Tuesday, I refuse even to try to make a decision about it until next Tuesday arrives. In the meantime, I concentrate on getting all the facts that bear on the problem. I don't worry, he said. I don't agonize over my problem. I don't lose any sleep. I simply concentrate on getting the facts. And by the time Tuesday rolls around, if I've got all the facts, the problem usually solves itself. I asked Dean Hawks if this meant he had licked worry entirely. Yes, he said. I think I can honestly say that my life is now almost totally devoid of worry. I have found, he went on, that if a man will devote his time to securing facts in an impartial, objective way, his worries usually evaporate in the light of knowledge. Let me repeat that. If a man will devote his time to securing facts in an impartial, objective way, his worries will usually evaporate in the light of knowledge. But what do most of us do? If we bother with facts at all, and Thomas Edison said in all seriousness, there is no expedient to which a man will not resort to avoid the labor of thinking. If we bother with facts at all, we hunt like bird dogs after the facts that bolster up what we already think, and ignore all the others. We want only the facts that justify our acts, the facts that fit in conveniently with our wishful thinking, and justify our preconceived prejudices. As André Maurois put it, everything that is in agreement with our personal desires seems true. Everything that is not puts us into a rage. Is it any wonder, then, that we find it so hard to get at the answers to our problems? Wouldn't we have the same trouble trying to solve a second-grade arithmetic problem if we went ahead on the assumption that 2 plus 2 equals 5? Yet there are a lot of people in this world who make life a hell for themselves and others by insisting that 2 plus 2 equals 5, or maybe 500. What can we do about it? We have to keep our emotions out of our thinking, and, as Dean Hawks put it, we must secure the facts in an impartial, objective manner. That is not an easy task when we are worried. When we are worried, our emotions are riding high. But here are 2 ideas that I have found helpful when trying to step aside from my problems in order to see the facts in a clear, objective manner. When trying to get the facts, I pretend that I am collecting this information not for myself, but for some other person. This helps me to take a cold, impartial view of the evidence. This helps me eliminate my emotions. While trying to collect the facts about the problem that is worrying me, I sometimes pretend that I am a lawyer preparing to argue the other side of the issue. In other words, I try to get all the facts against myself, all the facts that are damaging to my wishes, all the facts I don't like to face. Then I write down both my side of the case and the other side of the case, and I generally find that the truth lies somewhere in between these 2 extremities. Here is the point I am trying to make. Neither you, nor I, nor Einstein, nor the Supreme Court of the United States is brilliant enough to reach an intelligent decision on any problem without first getting the facts. Thomas Edison knew that. At the time of his death, he had 2,500 notebooks filled with facts about the problems he was facing. So rule 1 for solving our problems is get the facts. Let's do what Dean Hawkes did. Let's not even attempt to solve our problems without first collecting all the facts in an impartial manner. As I have already said, I probably saved my life by sitting down that Sunday afternoon and writing out all the various steps I could take, and then writing down the probable consequences of each step and calmly coming to a decision. If I hadn't done that, I might have floundered and hesitated and done the wrong thing on the spur of the moment. If I hadn't thought out my problem and come to a decision, I would have been frantic with worry all Sunday afternoon. I wouldn't have slept that night. I would have gone down to the office Monday morning with a harassed and worried look, and that alone might have aroused the suspicion of the Japanese admiral and spurred him to act. Experience has proved to me, time after time, the enormous value of arriving at a decision. It is the failure to arrive at a fixed purpose, the inability to stop going round and round in maddening circles, that drives men to nervous breakdowns and living hells. I find that 50% of my worries vanishes once I arrive at a clear, definite decision, and another 40% usually vanishes once I start to carry out that decision. So I banish about 90% of my worries by taking these 4 steps. Writing down precisely what I am worrying about, writing down what I can do about it, deciding what to do, starting immediately to carry out that decision. Galen Litchfield is now the Far Eastern Director for Starr, Park & Freeman Inc., 3 John Street, New York, representing large insurance and financial interests. In fact, as I said before, Galen Litchfield today is one of the most important American businessmen in Asia, and he confesses to me that he owes a large part of his success to this method of analyzing worry and meeting it head-on. Why is his method so superb? Because it is efficient, concrete, and goes directly to the heart of the problem. On top of all that, it is climaxed by the 3rd and indispensable rule: do something about it. Unless we carry out our action, all our fact-finding and analysis is whistling upwind. It's a sheer waste of energy. William James said this: when once a decision is reached and execution is the order of the day, dismiss absolutely all responsibility and care about the outcome. In this case, William James undoubtedly used the word care as a synonym for anxiety. He meant, once you have made a careful decision based on facts, go into action. Don't stop to reconsider. Don't begin to hesitate, worry, and retrace your steps. Don't lose yourself in self-doubting, which begets other doubts. Don't keep looking back over your shoulder. I once asked Wade Phillips, one of Oklahoma's most prominent oil men, how he carried out decisions. He replied, "I find that to keep thinking about our problems beyond a certain point is bound to create confusion and worry. There comes a time when any more investigation and thinking are harmful. There comes a time when we must decide and act and never look back." Why don't you employ Galen Litchfield's technique to one of your worries right now? Here is question number 1. What am I worrying about? Question number 2. What can I do about it? Question number 3. Here is what I am going to do about it. Question number 4. When am I going to start doing it? If you are a businessman, you are probably saying to yourself right now, the title of this chapter is ridiculous. I have been running my business for 19 years, and I certainly know the answers if anybody does. The idea of anybody trying to tell me how I can eliminate 50% of my business worries, it's absurd. Fair enough. I would have felt exactly the same way myself a few years ago if I had seen this title on a chapter. It promises a lot, and promises are cheap. Let's be very frank about it. Maybe I won't be able to help you eliminate 50% of your business worries. In the last analysis, no one can do that. except yourself. But what I can do is to show you how other people have done it and leave the rest to you. You may recall that on page 25 of this book, I quoted the world-famous Dr. Alexis Carrel as saying, "Businessmen who do not know how to fight, worry, die young." Since worry is that serious, wouldn't you be satisfied if I could help you eliminate even 10% of your worries? Yes? Good. Well, I am going to show you how one business executive eliminated not 50% of his worries, but 75% of all the time he formerly spent in conferences trying to solve business problems. Furthermore, I'm not going to tell you this story about a Mr. Jones or a Mr. X or a man I know in Ohio, vague stories that you can't check up on. It concerns a very real person, Leon Shimkin, a partner and general manager of one of the foremost publishing houses in the United States, Simon & Schuster, Rockefeller Center, New York 20, New York. Here is Leon Shimkin's experience in his own words. For 15 years, I spent almost half of every business day holding conferences, discussing problems. Should we do this or that? Do nothing at all. We would get tense, twist in our chairs, walk the floor, argue and go around in circles. When night came, I would be utterly exhausted. I fully expected to go on doing this sort of thing for the rest of my life. I had been doing it for 15 years, and it never occurred to me that there was a better way of doing it. If anyone had told me that I could eliminate 3/4 of all the time I spent in those worried conferences and 3/4 of my nervous strain, I would have thought he was a wild-eyed, slap-happy armchair optimist. Yet I devised a plan that did just that. I have been using this plan for 8 years. It has performed wonders for my efficiency, my health, and my happiness. It sounds like magic, but like all magic tricks, it is extremely simple when you see how it is done. Here is the secret. First, I immediately stopped the procedure I had been using in my conferences for 15 years. A procedure that began with my troubled associates reciting all the details of what had gone wrong and ending up by asking, "What shall we do?" Second, I made a new rule, a rule that everyone who wishes to present a problem to me must first prepare and submit a memorandum answering these 4 questions. Question 1. What is the problem? In the old days, we used to spend an hour or two in a worried conference without anyone's knowing specifically and concretely what the real problem was. We used to work ourselves into a lather discussing our troubles without ever troubling to write out specifically what our problem was. Question 2. What is the cause of the problem? As I look back over my career, I am appalled at the wasted hours I have spent in worried conferences without ever trying to find out clearly the conditions which lay at the root of the problem. Question 3. What are all possible solutions of the problem? In the old days, one man in the conference would suggest one solution. Someone else would argue with him. Tempers would flare. We would often get clear off the subject, and at the end of the conference, no one would have written down all the various things we could do to attack the problem. Question 4. What solution do you suggest? I used to go into a conference with a man who had spent hours worrying about a situation and going around in circles without ever once thinking through all possible solutions and then writing down, "This is the solution I recommend." My associates rarely come to me now with their problems. Why? Because they have discovered that in order to answer these 4 questions, they have to get all the facts and think their problems through. And after they have done that, they find, in 3/4 of the cases, they don't have to consult me at all, because the proper solution has popped out like a piece of bread popping out from an electric toaster. Even in those cases where consultation is necessary, the discussion takes about 1/3 the time formerly required, because it proceeds along an orderly, logical path to a reasoned conclusion. Much less time is now consumed in the house of Simon & Schuster in worrying and talking about what is wrong, and a lot more action is obtained toward making those things right. My friend, Frank Betker, one of the top insurance men in America, tells me he not only reduced his business worries, but nearly doubled his income by a similar method. Years ago, says Frank Betker, when I first started to sell insurance, I was filled with a boundless enthusiasm and love for my work. Then something happened. I became so discouraged that I despised my work and thought of giving it up. I think I would have quit if I hadn't got the idea, one Saturday morning, of sitting down and trying to get at the root of my worries. 1. I asked myself first, just what is the problem? The problem was that I was not getting high enough returns for the staggering amount of calls I was making. I seemed to do pretty well at selling a prospect until the moment came for closing a sale. Then the customer would say, "Well, I'll think it over, Mr. Betker. Come and see me again." It was the time I wasted on these follow-up calls that was causing my depression. 2. I asked myself, what are the possible solutions? But to get the answer to that one, I had to study the facts. I got out my record book for the last 12 months and studied the figures. I made an astounding discovery. Right there in black and white, I discovered that 70% of my sales had been closed on the very first interview. 23% of my sales had been closed on the second interview, and only 7% of my sales had been closed on those third, fourth, fifth, etc. interviews, which were running me ragged and taking up my time. In other words, I was wasting fully 1/2 of my working day on a part of my business which was responsible for only 7% of my sales. 3. What is the answer? The answer was obvious. I immediately cut out all visits beyond the second interview and spent the extra time building up new prospects. The results were unbelievable. In a very short time, I had almost doubled the cash value of every visit I made from a call. As I said, Frank Betker is now one of the best-known life insurance salesmen in America. He is with Fidelity Mutual of Philadelphia and writes $1 million worth of policies a year. But he was on the point of giving up. He was on the point of admitting failure, until analyzing the problem gave him a boost on the road to success. Can you apply these questions to your business problems? To repeat my challenge, they can reduce your worries by 50%. Here they are again. What is the problem? What is the cause of the problem? What are all possible solutions to the problem? What solution do you suggest? Rule 1. Get the facts. Remember that Dean Hawkes of Columbia University said that half the worry in the world is caused by people trying to make decisions before they have sufficient knowledge on which to base a decision. Rule 2. After carefully weighing all the facts, come to a decision. Rule 3. Once a decision is carefully reached, act. Get busy carrying out your decision and dismiss all anxiety about the outcome. Rule 4. When you or any of your associates are tempted to worry about a problem, write out and answer the following questions. A. What is the problem? B. What is the cause of the problem? C. What are all possible solutions? D. What is the best solution? How to crowd worry out of your mind. I shall never forget the night, a few years ago, when Marion J. Douglas was a student in one of my classes. I have not used his real name. He requested me, for personal reasons, not to reveal his identity. But here is his real story as he told it before one of our adult education classes. He told us how tragedy had struck at his home, not once, but twice. The first time he had lost his 5-year-old daughter, a child he adored. He and his wife thought they couldn't endure that first loss. But as he said, 10 months later, God gave us another little girl, and she died in 5 days. This double bereavement was almost too much to bear. I couldn't take it, this father told us. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't rest or relax. My nerves were utterly shaken, and my confidence gone. At last he went to doctors, One recommended sleeping pills and another recommended a trip. He tried both, but neither remedy helped. He said, "My body felt as if it were encased in a vice, and the jaws of the vice were being drawn tighter and tighter." The tension of grief. If you have ever been paralyzed by sorrow, you know what he meant. But thank God, I had one child left, a 4-year-old son. He gave me the solution to my problem. One afternoon, as I sat around feeling sorry for myself, he asked, "Daddy, will you build a boat for me?" I was in no mood to build a boat. In fact, I was in no mood to do anything. But my son is a persistent little fellow. I had to give in. Building that toy boat took about 3 hours. By the time it was finished, I realized that those 3 hours spent building that boat were the first hours of mental relaxation and peace that I had had in months. That discovery jarred me out of my lethargy and caused me to do a bit of thinking, the first real thinking I had done in months. I realized that it is difficult to worry while you are busy doing something that requires planning and thinking. In my case, building the boat had knocked worry out of the ring, so I resolved to keep busy. The following night, I went from room to room in the house, compiling a list of jobs that ought to be done. Scores of items needed to be repaired: bookcases, stair steps, storm windows, window shades, knobs, locks, leaky taps. Astonishing as it seems, in the course of 2 weeks I had made a list of 242 items that needed attention. During the last 2 years I have completed most of them. Besides, I have filled my life with stimulating activities. 2 nights per week I attend adult education classes in New York. I have gone in for civic activities in my hometown, and I am now chairman of the school board. I attend scores of meetings. I help collect money for the Red Cross and other activities. I am so busy now that I have no time for worry. No time for worry. That is exactly what Winston Churchill said when he was working 18 hours a day at the height of the war. When he was asked if he worried about his tremendous responsibilities, he said, "I'm too busy. I have no time for worry."